On Monday Night Football, the Tennessee Titans beat the Buffalo Bills 34-31. Most of what I have to say is about Tennessee. That's why I want to start with Buffalo. We'll do Buffalo, then we'll talk about Tennessee. I'm torn here because on one hand, this feels like a really, really bad loss for Buffalo. They lost on Monday Night Football. It was a game that was winnable that the Bills couldn't finish. And there's little details that cost Buffalo from winning this football game. And by the way, Tennessee's secondary is already bad, then got injured. Also, Caleb Farley, their corner, a rookie, got hurt towards ACL, out for the year. But he missed a lot of the game. Left tackle Taylor Lewan for the Titans got a concussion, did not play the entire second half. And Buffalo couldn't take advantage of either the fact that their secondary is weakened or the fact that their left tackle wasn't playing. That's a big deal. And the Titans were not at full strength, and yet Buffalo could not leverage that into a win. So if you want to read into that as a big red flag, oh, Buffalo's not going to be able to win a playoff game, you can if you want to. There are certainly a number of key plays where Buffalo did not do well enough to win those plays, and they got stopped 2 times on the goal line early in the game. They had to settle for field goals, one on the 5-yard line, once on the 10-yard line. There's a 3rd and goal that's stuck in my head where Josh Allen had Stephon Diggs open in the end zone and missed him. He threw an inaccurate throw, and that should have been a touchdown that would have won them the game. And that's the difference right there. So I'm torn because Buffalo lost a clearly winnable football game. But also on the other side is, well, if a couple plays go their way rather than the way of Tennessee, Buffalo would have won. So people want to make big, loud statements, and I know my show is called Strong Opinion Sports, but sometimes the strongest thing you can say is there isn't a black and white answer here. And now the big controversial thing from this game was that Buffalo found themselves, the situation was 4th and inches on the 2.5-yard line with 22 seconds left, down 34-31. And Buffalo decided to go for it. Rather than kick the field goal and tie the game, they said, nah, we're going to go for it on 4th and inches. Quarterback sneak, we want to win. And I have an opinion here. Like I said, sometimes I think the strongest thing you can do is share both sides. And I think strong opinion sports, most people think that means pick a side. But if I don't believe in a side, I'm not going to pick it, which we can disagree. I think that's actually strength to say, hey, this side makes some sense and that side makes some sense. Maybe that's moderate opinion sports, and I don't know. But no doubt people will get angry. After the outcome was decided, whether you go for it on 4th and inches and miss, or maybe you kick the field goal and you miss. As long as Buffalo doesn't win that game, half the audience is going to be mad no matter what happens on 4th and inches. And what happened was Buffalo went for it. They did not get it. Josh Allen ran a quarterback sneak and got stopped. But I don't want to be too harsh here because sometimes you make a call and you make that decision and it doesn't work out. No matter what decision was made, again, you kick a field goal, you go for it. If the outcome was negative, half of the audience is going to be mad, and half is going to say, well, it's the right call and whatever. And it's all a giant what if to me. There's been a conversation all week of, should the Bills have kicked the field goal down 3 points, 22 seconds left on the 2.5-yard line, or was it right to go for it, try to get the victory? Does anyone ask the question, what if they missed the field goal? We've seen crazier things happen where sometimes NFL kickers, the moment's too big or you get a penalty, something happens and you miss a chip shot field goal. So this whole conversation, what if would have happened? Oh, they lost and it's unfortunate, but accept it and move on. I have no deep rage, or a lot of people were outraged. I can't believe they went for it. And I just don't have that in my heart. I'm like, well, they didn't, they went for it. It didn't work. I probably would have kicked it. Let's be clear. I look at it as, well, what I didn't like was the quarterback sneak, I guess, really. 4th and inches, you run a quarterback sneak with 22 seconds left. What if you get it? You still got to score a touchdown. So Buffalo wasn't trying to get a touchdown on that play. They were trying to just get the first down and buy themselves a couple more downs. But you have only 22 seconds left, so even if you run a quarterback sneak and get a first down, you still got to score the touchdown. You could get stopped and end up kicking a field goal anyway. If the outcome is you might end up kicking a field goal anyway, then why not just, why not kick the field goal, tie the game, go to overtime? You got a better quarterback. You probably win in overtime. I don't know, man. But again, the Bills went for the win. They didn't get it. It happens. They came up inches short. And I think you just got to learn to move on. And I kind of have seen messages I've gotten all week and been like, I don't really have the heart for this conversation. It just, you made a call, it didn't work out. Now, to me, I was surprised Tennessee won this game. I view Buffalo as a Super Bowl team, or at least a Super Bowl contender. There's like 5 teams in the West, or in the AFC, and 5 teams in the NFC that all have an opportunity to win the Super Bowl this year. I think Buffalo is in this Super Bowl conversation. And what this game did, watching Tennessee beat Buffalo, started a conversation in my head. I'm like, how good are the Tennessee Titans? Like, And then I'm like, well, they got dominated by Arizona week 1. But their left tackle, Taylor, the one, was playing hurt. Clearly was not at full strength. He got dominated by Arizona's pass rush. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I can't really explain their other loss. They lost to the New York Jets. And the one thing you can say, I guess, is that the Titans' corners are not very good. And the game, now that I think about it, was in London. I'm like 99.9% sure. If it wasn't in London, you can look it up. I'm pretty sure that game was in London because I got a bunch of messages about it. Like, I watched the game. I literally read a thing on Ask Zach last episode. I think someone saying I was at the game in London. So yeah, they lost to Tennessee. Tennessee lost to New York in London. That affects your game for sure. Like, playing across the pond is a little bit difficult. Maybe that explains why they lost to the Jets. Again, the Titans' corners are not very good though, and they gave up some really big plays to Jets rookie quarterback Zach Wilson. So we say, hey, left tackle hurt week 1. You lost in London to the Jets with your secondary is awful, and that it just happens. Still, though, after 6 games, Tennessee is 4-1, and they're probably a playoff team. So they deserve some level of respect. I don't think they're clearly, like, Tennessee is not garbage, right? Like, just not true. Now, the corners are a big problem. The secondary in Tennessee is just. It's bad. It's really like they are a mismatch for a team like Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. That's another reason why they lost so bad week 1 is Arizona has fantastic receivers matching up with a secondary in Tennessee that's just not very good. And then the passing game is still lacking in Tennessee. Last year with Arthur Smith, I was like, they still need to progress a little bit. Here's what I will say, though. It's still early with the passing game in Tennessee. They're still working on chemistry. And remember, you have a new offensive coordinator in Tennessee this year, Todd Downing. Plus, they traded for a stud receiver, Julio Jones. And Julio also has been hurt and missed some time, like 2.5 games, basically. Got hurt during week 3. So I believe it's reasonable to be patient with the Titans passing game. They're still building chemistry and figuring things out. Fair enough. They're figuring out how do all these parts work together. You got an offensive coordinator learning how to play calls for the guys he's working with. Adding Julio Jones, getting a new offensive coordinator, but adding Julio Jones really does change all the dynamics. Like, who do you target on 3rd down? Both from a play calling standpoint and if you're Ryan Tannehill, do you get one-on-one coverage? A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, who are you targeting? Like, you have to figure out who you have better chemistry with. And right now, he probably would go after A.J. Brown, but you don't want to leave Julio Jones on an eye. Like, it's interesting. And Ryan Tannehill is figuring out timing with Julio Jones, learning his style, what he's good at, what ways can I target him. I think he's learning I can really throw a jump ball to Julio Jones, and Julio can bring it down. So I want to say we're only 6 games in, and the Titans' offense is still growing and developing. Give it time. Let's be patient. We'll see where they're at we have 11 games left this year. We'll learn a lot about Tennessee throughout the next 11 games, but I'm not ready to say, like, oh, Ryan Tannehill. Like, I've seen a lot of people say Ryan Tannehill's horrible, and he had a miss on 3rd down. He missed A.J. Brown across the middle. He threw the ball high. Maybe it was A.J. Brown or Julio Jones. Had one of those two open across the middle, missed him high. I'm like, that's a key miss you can't have. But then also, down the stretch in this game against Buffalo, and really, you can say this every time Ryan Tannehill takes the field in a football game. Ryan Tannehill is weirdly clutch. It's a true thing about him that 3rd down and 4th down in the second half in overtime, he always finds a way to make the right play, whether that's running for 4 yards on 3rd and 3, diving for a first down, or making a great read, throwing the ball. Like, he actually does a lot of stuff with his legs that doesn't get appreciated. So I am not comfortable saying Ryan Tannehill is awful. He's certainly not. He's not a top 10 quarterback, that's for sure. But I think Ryan Tannehill gets a lot of hate and doesn't get the respect he deserves for the good work he's done in recent years. Now, this Monday night game gives me an opportunity to talk about someone who is fantastic. It's Titans running back Derrick Henry. Against Buffalo, Derrick Henry had 20 carries for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it's funny, after this game, my Instagram DMs went crazy. People are like, oh my gosh, Derrick Henry went off. Did you see what he did? And it's a bit of a weird comment, but I don't mean to sound unappreciative, because I appreciate Derrick Henry and what he's done. He's amazing. But Derrick Henry does that all the time. I wasn't like, whoa, can you see what Derrick Henry's capable of? Because we see it constantly. Like, did anybody, I think a lot of people nationally, Titans fans did, Seahawks fans did. I think most people on a national scale that don't follow Tennessee or Seattle really closely probably didn't watch Titans at Seattle week 2, but I watched that game, and that's an even better, like, Derrick Henry's had an even better performance this year than we saw on Monday Night Football against Buffalo. Buffalo, great game, but that Seattle game Derrick Henry had in week 2 was incredible. And that's the word that comes to mind. Derrick Henry is incredible. He had a 76-yard touchdown run up the middle. It's a highlight of the night from this football game. You basically never see a 250-pound man who can outrun everyone else on the football field. That doesn't happen. He's 247 pounds, let's be clear, but that's ridiculous. And Derrick Henry is a throwback to an old era. I mean, he fits in with the 80s and the 90s. I imagine if Derrick Henry played in the 80s or in the 90s, like, I actually think he might have been better, because he would have had more opportunities, would have got the ball more. We play in a very quarterback focused. I don't play. We watch. We're witnessing a very quarterback focused NFL right now. Derrick Henry's playing. He's like the most old school running back playing in a quarterback driven league. It's very interesting. Like, I would have loved to see Derrick Henry. Like, it's kind of there's that Marvel show, What If? Like, what if blank? What if Derrick Henry had been in the position of Emmitt Smith? Like, what would have happened? I think we would have seen even more than what Emmitt Smith did. It's very possible. Like, that's blasphemy to some people, but give Derrick Henry the respect he's deserving. And I just think, man, I can't say enough good things about the way that Derrick Henry plays. The way he runs through contact is incredible. And it's also crazy. Derrick Henry is 27 years old, and which is about the beginning of the end of someone's prime in the NFL, for running back at least. And I wonder, how much longer can Derrick Henry play at a really high level the way he is? Because the dude is 27, he's in year 6 right now. And that usually is when a running back will slow down a little bit. But Derrick Henry is showing no signs of slowing down at all. He's amazing. He's in his physical prime. And I'm curious, how long will Derrick Henry keep it up? I mean, I want to read a question on Patreon from Randy. Randy writes in, he says, "Hey, Zach, you seem very critical of the Giants for taking Saquon Barkley with a number 2 pick simply because, quote, a running back shouldn't be taken that high regardless of talent. Do you feel the same about the Jaguars taking Leonard Fournette with the number 4 pick, or the Cowboys trading up to the number 4 pick to take Ezekiel Elliott, or the Rams taking Todd Gurley with the number 10 pick? Where do you feel is the absolute earliest a running back should be drafted?" I love that question. So Derrick Henry is an incredible example of why you do not need a running back in the top 10. Derrick Henry was a 2nd-round pick. Don't forget that. And by the way, you talk about Dallas. Dallas had not 1 but 2 opportunities to draft Derrick Henry, and they passed on him twice. Nick Chubb was a 2nd-round pick. Joe Mixon was a 2nd-rounder. Colts running back Jonathan Taylor was drafted in the 2nd round. Look at the top 10 rushing leaders right now in the NFL. There's 2 first-round picks. You have Najee Harris, who is the number 24 overall pick. He's a rookie right now. I love that pick. We'll talk about why that's okay. And then you have Ezekiel Elliott, who was the number 4 overall pick. And only one of those guys, that Ezekiel Elliott pick, was a top 10 pick. The other top 10 rushing leaders, so we'll tell you top 11 because Alvin Kamara's in there too, were all of them not picked in the first round. Or sorry, 9 of the top 11 guys. I don't know 12. I know the top 11. So maybe 12 is not a first round pick too, but only 2 guys in the top 11 in rushing in the NFL right now are former first round picks. Najee Harris, number 24 overall. Ezekiel Elliott, number 4 overall. Vikings running back, Dalvin Cook was a 2nd round pick. Aaron Jones, the Packers running back, was a 5th round pick. Jaguars running back, James Robinson, went undrafted. Alvin Kamara, one of the most incredible explosive running backs in the NFL, was a 3rd round pick. So it's clear and obvious at this point that you can get top talent at the running back position later in the draft. You do not need to draft a running back, in the top 10. Where would I be most comfortable drafting a running back? I would feel most comfortable drafting a guy like that in the 2nd round. I think a 2nd round is perfect. Get what you... Here's why. And I can be talked into drafting later in the 1st round. Like the Steelers drafting Najee Harris, number 24 overall. I like that because, hey, by later in the 1st round, the best, most talented players are off the board, and you're just saying, can we find a starter in the 1st round? That's all your goal is later in the 1st round. But I would not draft a running back inside the top 10 because you can get more bang for your buck in the top 10. There are so many other running backs available after the top 10. I don't know why you need to get one there. It screams of desperation or a lack of understanding of the rarity of a great offensive lineman or defensive lineman or a top quarterback or a corner or a safety. Like, running back has so many available players. It's ubiquitous. There's great running backs all over the place. And you can get one in the 2nd round, the 3rd round, the 4th round, the 5th round. You don't need to draft one in the top 10 to get quality. If you're drafting in the top 10, you can get a more impactful and more rare player than drafting a running back. So yeah, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley you mentioned. Those are all mistakes in my opinion. And I understand the hardest one to argue there is Ezekiel Elliott because Ezekiel Elliott, they went to the playoffs his rookie year, was awesome. He had a big impact immediately. But then realize this, I mentioned this earlier, realize that when in 2016, Ezekiel Elliott got drafted number 4 overall by the Cowboys, who traded up to get him. In that same NFL draft, Derrick Henry went in the 2nd round. The reality is the Cowboys could have drafted a amazing corner, Jalen Ramsey, number 4 overall, who went number 5 to the Jaguars. And then in the 2nd round, taken Derrick Henry, number 34 overall. Dallas passed on Derrick Henry not once, but twice in the 2016 NFL draft. And I ask you, who would you rather have today? Derrick Henry or Ezekiel Elliott? I would rather have Derrick Henry. So look, in my opinion, drafting a running back in the top 10 is always a mistake. And I just think you can always do better. You can always draft a better, more impactful player. Like, you don't need, why make an unforced error when you don't need to draft a running back in the top 10? You can get other players who can make a better impact. I look at the Giants. I love Saquon Barkley. I had to talk to my buddy Joe about this yesterday. Saquon Barkley is an incredible running back. When I criticize the Giants for drafting Saquon Barkley number 2 overall, I'm not criticizing Saquon Barkley. He's amazing. What I'm criticizing is that they prioritized running back over offensive line. They drafted Saquon Barkley number 2 and then a guard, Will Hernandez, in the 2nd round. I would have swapped that. I would have drafted Quentin Nelson, number 2 overall, because I value linemen more than a running back. And then I would have drafted Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. And I remember criticizing that at the time. Like, Saquon's a great player, but how good is a running back without help, without a good offensive line? Most of the time, 99% of the time, there's a few exceptions. Most of the time, if you're a running back without a great offensive line, it doesn't matter. You're not going to do very well. Now, 2 Titans players got hurt on Monday night. Left tackle Taylor Lewan left the game early. He's now in concussion protocol. We'll see if he plays next week during NFL Week 7. It was ugly. Taylor Lewan was out like a light It was not pretty. Then number 2, Titans corner, first round pick, Caleb Farley tore his ACL. I feel horrible for him. Kind of, honestly, like, it's 2 first round picks in a row that aren't going to play a lot or pan out very well early on for Tennessee. Caleb Farley's better than the guy they got last year in Tennessee. But it really sucks that Caleb Farley's year is now over. And look, this Titans secondary, they're a problem. They just are. It's a problem that's not going away for Tennessee, where they have blown coverages and missed assignments, and it's rough, man. Right now, Tennessee is 4-2. They are number 1 in the AFC South. And the biggest threat to them is the Colts and Indy. Indy is 2-4. And there are still 11 games left this year. I'm interested to see, though, can Indy catch Tennessee? You got 11 games. There's a 2-game difference. Like, it's not baseball, but you're like, oh, Indy is 2 games back. Can they overcome Tennessee and overtake them? I don't know, but it'll be an interesting storyline to see how that plays out the rest of the year. I have 2 final notes I want to talk about from this game. Number 1 is very short. I don't know if I'm the only person out there, and I remember, like, one of my favorite things in the world was designing jerseys in Madden, and I love, like, all dark, single-color jerseys, whether, like, usually when I made a team on Madden, I made them all black. And then at one point I realized, wait, all black isn't as interesting as all dark. Navy blue is like my favorite color jersey, and the Titans all dark blue NFL jerseys are super cool. It's some of my favorite jerseys in the entire NFL. I love the look. I like how they look with the red cleats. It looks fantastic. I want to give a shout out to that because, man, I really believe that Tennessee's all dark blue jerseys are, that combo might be, it's one of the most beautiful combos in the entire NFL for a jersey combination. Now, note number 2, I want to give a shout out to Bills tight end Dawson Knox. He has 5 touchdown catches this year. He's having sort of a breakout year right now. And he's got a cool story because Dawson Knox played college football at Ole Miss. And he had to walk on to make the team at Ole Miss in college. Didn't do very much there. Part of that was because they had 2 top receivers, DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. He also didn't have a great quarterback when he was in college. Like, Dawson Knox only had 15 catches his final year at Ole Miss. He never caught a touchdown in college. And so to see him emerge into a really good NFL tight end right now, 5 touchdown catches, like, he has a third of as many touchdown catches this year as he had total catches his final year at Ole Miss. It's just, he's a guy who was not a star in college who is becoming a really, really good starter in the NFL. And it's just a cool story. Shout out to Dawson Knox. I really like his story, and it's cool to hear that a former walk-on, a guy who wasn't a star in college, has become a really good role player and a very solid starter in Buffalo.